My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, today we have the Seiko SRPC39, aka the Seiko Mini Turtle. However, I'm not a huge fan of that nickname. This isn't just a turtle that they shrank down. It's its own watch with its own kind of unique style, and I've heard a different nickname for it, which I much prefer, which is the Seiko Minnow. So I'll be referring to this watch as the Seiko Minnow in this review. Now, as always, we're going to do specifications, pros, cons, and then if I think this watch is worth the money. But before we start, it's been interesting to watch some of my stats on YouTube. One of the things I've been focusing on is what percentage of my views are from subscribers. And that statistic has slowly been creeping up percent by percent. Last week we were at 6% and now we're at about 7%. So if you're enjoying the channel and you haven't yet subscribed, I would love if you would do so. Let's see if we can get to 8% by next week. All right, thank you so much. Starting with the case, we have 42 millimeter case diameter. It's only about 43.5 millimeters lug to lug. It's 13 millimeters thick, and then you have a 20 millimeter lug width opening. Now, a quick word about these case dimensions. Now, this is a 42 millimeter watch, which generally is kind of the limit of what I want to wear. But Seiko does something it's really the Seiko case magic, where they make watches, they look bigger in specs, but when you try them on, they just fit really well. Now, part of that is accomplished by this very short lug to lug dimension. And you'll see on the wrist shot, I do have a smaller wrist at 6 3/4 inch. However, these shorter lug to lug dimensions make the watches more wearable than they might appear based on just their case diameter. So it's an often overlooked statistic, but pay attention to that lug to lug distance and you'll really see why in the wrist shot. The finishing is well executed. You actually have high polish on the edge of this bezel, and then the side is brushed, which continues into brushing along the top of the case, and then high polish at the bottom. The transitions are nice and sharp, and I don't know, there's something about this watch just on wrist. I love just that sharp line between the transitions and just the overall shape of the case. It's very aesthetically pleasing. They did do drilled lug holes, which helps with strap changes. Now, on this strap, we have a 20 millimeter strap, the opening, so you're gonna have a lot of choices if you wanna wear something different. This is the stock strap that it comes with. It does actually flare out to about 22 millimeters and then tapers down all the way to 18. There's the really cool Seiko wave at this end. And then on the other end, you have some really solid hardware here. This Seiko keeper, you can see that it's brushed along the top. It has the Seiko logo, but then you have high polished chamfered edge all the way around. It's really high quality. And then also the pin and buckle, they etch Seiko in and it's just really solid. The strap overall seems very high quality. This is my first rubber strap. I've heard some of the older ones are lint magnets. This one's a little bit guilty of that, but it's very flexible and comfortable. And then what they did here is it's smooth on the outside, and then it has a textured pattern on the inside, which kind of helps grip it to your wrist. And I have found this strap extremely comfortable throughout the day. So I think they did a great job on the strap on this case, on this watch. Flipping the watch over, we do have Seiko, the Prospex X. It does say that this is using the 4R35 movement, and then you do have air divers, 200 meters. Yes, this is an ISO certified dive watch with 200 meters of water resistance. For the movement, like I said, it is the 4R35, which is a 21,600 vibration per hour movement with hacking, hand winding, and a 41-hour power reserve that features the date. And then the stated accuracy on this watch is -20 to +40 seconds a day, but we will get it on the Timegrapher later in the video. The unsigned crown resides at the 3 o'clock position. Now this is a screw down crown and it's nicely knurled, and that in combination with the lack of crown guards makes it really easy to operate this watch. Now the crystal is Seiko's proprietary Hardlex. It's a little bit more scratch resistant than mineral, not quite as scratch resistant as sapphire. And you can see they did a Cyclops here, and I'm seeing these pop up on more and more of the new Seiko releases. Now, I know Cyclopses are pretty divisive. However, my main rule is as long as it magnifies the date and therefore is accomplishing the role it's supposed to be performing, then I'm okay with it. And this one, they actually did a good job of executing it. The Cyclops is very small, it's round, it doesn't draw a lot of attention to itself, and then it does magnify the date quite a bit, so it makes the date a lot easier to read. So I'm okay with the Cyclops in this case, but that is just something I've been noticing, that a lot of the new Seikos, they are featuring Cyclopses. Now the bezel has Aluminum insert, it's a blue, it matches quite closely to the dial. It might be a little bit more bright than the dial itself. It's a 120 click unidirectional bezel and has great action. It's always a good sign if I can operate it under the camera like this. And indeed, the action is smooth and consistent throughout. And I got very lucky on this particular model. Everything does line up, but your mileage may vary with Seiko and alignment. So the dial is actually this very dark, I would say maybe a navy blue, and it does have a slight texture pattern to it when you get up close to it and you shine very bright light on it. And you can see here that, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference in color between the dial and the bezel. The bezel, it's a bit more bright blue, and the dial is darker. I want to call it a navy blue almost, but I'm not even actually sure if that is the right word for it. It's a very interesting deep blue. And then for the indices, they went with these. I really like the 12 o'clock indice. It's this interesting V, and you can see they left part of it unloomed, and it is high polish, so that will kind of catch reflections and light right there at the 12 o'clock. And then at the 6 and the 9 o'clock, you have these interesting, they look like little dinner bells, I would say, indices, and that little tip that extends off the top is present at the 12 as well, so you kind of have a crosshair, which really helps with orientation in combination with the date there at 3 o'clock. So overall, very high legibility and a very easy to tell kind of the orientation of the watch from a quick glance. I really like what they did with the dial and the indices overall. You do have Seiko at 12 o'clock, the Prospex X, automatic and divers 200 meter at the 6 o'clock. A little busy maybe at the 6 o'clock, but I can live with it. Then the chapter ring, they did a good job. It matches the dial quite well, and then it has a dash for each of the 60 minutes. And then we have a very familiar Seiko handset here. We have an arrow minute hand, a syringe hour hand, and then that lollipop second hand. Always a bit of a pet peeve of mine. I would love if the minute hand was slightly longer, but it's of adequate length in this case. And then you can see the actual finishing on the hands themselves. There is a brushed finish on the hour and the minute hand, and then that second hand is basically high polish on one end and then darkened on the counterbalance side. For the Lume, well, Seiko Lume never disappoints, and this is no exception. The Lume on the hands and indices is responsive, bright, and lasts a long time. And there it is on the Timegrapher, losing about 6 seconds a day, healthy amplitude, minimal beat error. And I know they always say the stated accuracy on these is -20 to +40 seconds, but in my experience, the vast majority fall into about the plus or minus, I would say, 10-second range. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, and this is Seiko case magic at its finest. Yes, this is a 42mm case, but due in part to the short lug-to-lug distance, this watch wears much closer to, I would say, a 40mm on my wrist. So pros and cons. Well, on the pro side, I love this case. If you have a smaller wrist, but you like a 42mm case diameter watch, this is going to be the choice for you. It's really easy to pull off, and it's super comfortable. Second, this is an ISO certified 200-meter dive watch, much like the SKX, but with the additional benefit of hacking and hand winding. So if you were unhappy that the 5KX, the quote-unquote replacement of the SKX, lost that designation, this is another option for you. Finally, I really like the rubber strap on this model, and the hardware is awesome, and it's very comfortable throughout the day. So for negatives, the first is the price. When these were first released in 2018, they were just south of $400, and I think that was a bit of sticker shock for Seiko enthusiasts at the time. In retrospect, it was a bit of a forerunner to the slow and steady price increases we have seen from Seiko since then. Secondly, the crown action is a little rough, and I'm not really sure why. It's funny because my new Seiko Samurai has a similar, it's almost gravel-like winding action, and it's something I've heard from other reviewers on that Samurai. It's fine, and it works fine, it's just a little bit disconcerting. So is this watch worth the money? Well, the prices on this watch have slowly begun to creep up. This is an interesting Seiko dive watch, and I actually think it's underappreciated. Should you get one, it's really up to your personal taste. There's no shortage of Seiko divers available, and for about the same price, you can get a King Turtle, which has a sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel insert. So if specifications are more important for you, you might want to go that route. However, if you appreciate the design of this watch, this might be the time to pick it up. I think it is underappreciated and might end up being something of a classic in the future. So there you have it, the Seiko Minnow. Let me know what you guys think of this watch in the comments below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.